Tartarus was not a colony. It was a worksite. Kalen Kai Reed, foreman of the Tartarus Ore Guild, stood on the observation deck of the Heap, a pressurized, multi-level habitat that had been welded together from the discarded husks of 3 different colony-class freighters. She sipped a bitter, recycled coffee and looked out at her kingdom. It was a kingdom of rust-red dust, volcanic fissures, and the skeletal kilometer-high frames of the automated mining rigs that clawed at the moon's resource-rich crust. Above them, the scrapyard arced across the black sky, a dense, swirling ring of debris, the accumulated garbage of 3 centuries of human mining, shipping, and corner cutting. Tartarus was ugly, it was dangerous, and it was profitable. The 5,000 souls who lived here were not soldiers, diplomats, or explorers. They were miners, engineers, refinery workers, and scrappers, men and women who were by nature pragmatic, stubborn, and universally unimpressed by authority. They were death-worlders, not by birth, but by choice, having signed up to work in a low-gravity, high-radiation environment that considered industrial accident a daily line item. "New contacts, boss," a voice crackled over her comm. It was Jeb, her lead engineer, a man whose face was permanently stained with grease and whose attitude was permanently set to skeptical. Kai's gaze shifted from the dust to the tactical display, a flickering second-hand military surplus screen. A fleet of ships had just translated into high orbit, appearing from nowhere. They were not human. They were not the usual blocky, functional freighters. These ships were beautiful. They were sleek, silver-white, and curved like blades, radiating an elegance that was almost offensive against the backdrop of the scrapyard. "They're not squawking any guild codes," Jeb said, his voice now filtering in from the ops pit below her. "No response to the standard hails, they're just sitting there, looking pretty." "Pretty," Kai muttered, "is just another word for expensive. What do they want?" The answer came a moment later, not as a hail, but as a broadcast. A powerful signal seized control of every screen in the heap. The image that appeared was of a being, tall, slender, and encased in armor that looked more like sculpted ceremonial artwork than a pressure suit. Its face was lupine proud and bore a look of profound, aristocratic disinterest. "I am High Lord V'hrak of the V'hrak Ascendancy," the being's voice announced, a translator turning its deep, resonant growls into flawless, condescending standard. "By the rights of noble war, and by the divine mandate of the blood flame, this territory, designated Tartarus, is hereby claimed in the name of the Ascendancy." Kai and Jeb stared at the screen. "This," V'hrak continued, "is a declaration of glorious combat. We offer you, the primitive inhabitants, the honor of surrendering your claim. If you refuse, we shall engage your warrior-caste in a formal set-piece battle of fleet lines and honorable duels, to be commenced at the dawn light of your next rotation. We await the presence of your chosen champion." The screen went blank. The ops pit was silent for a long, heavy moment. Then Jeb's voice crackled again, thick with a confusion that bordered on anger. "Boss," he said, Did that pretty wolf man just challenge us to a glorious fistfight for the whole moon?" "I think so, Jeb," Kai said, taking another sip of her cold coffee. She keyed her own transmitter, routing it to the external array and broadcast on the same frequency the V'hrak had used. "High Lord V'hrak, this is Foreman Kai Reed of the Tartarus Ore Guild," she said, her voice flat and unimpressed. "We are not a warrior caste. We are a profit-sharing collective. Your noble war is an unsolicited corporate takeover, and we do not recognize your claim. You are trespassing on a registered guild worksite. You have 30 minutes to vacate our orbital space, or you will be fined for illegal parking and charged for all resulting damages to our operations. Read out." Aboard the V'hrak flagship, the Will of Fire, High Lord V'hrak stared at the translation of the human's message. His lupine features, normally a mask of serene warrior-poet honor, were twisted in confusion. "Fined?" he asked his bridge attendants, his voice a low growl. "She threatens me with a fine?" The V'hrak were a species defined by honor. Their entire civilization was built on a complex, rigid, and deeply felt code of glorious combat. War, to them, was not a matter of Conquest. It was a performance of excellence, a divine art. They did not pillage or destroy. They challenged, they fought gloriously, and they won honorably, absorbing new territories and uplifting them with their own superior culture. This was not honorable. This was bureaucracy. High Lord, his tactical adjutant V'hrak said, his own honor clearly offended. The primitive foreman is illogical. She does not understand the grace we have offered her. She cannot comprehend the honor of our challenge. Evidently, V'hrak said, his lip curling. She thinks this is a transaction. She has no warrior caste. She has no champion. She has a guild. It is sordid. He paced the bridge, his claws clicking on the polished obsidian floor. The human response was a dishonor to the entire declaration. They were supposed to be afraid, or defiant. They were supposed to present their fleet for battle. This talk of fines and parking was a mockery. They must be taught, V'hrak declared. They do not understand honor. We must show them. V'hrak, you are my finest pilot. You will be my champion's herald. Take your glaive, fly to their settlement. Do not fire, do not engage. You will display my standard. You will broadcast the song of challenge on all frequencies. Fly low, fly fast. Let them see the meaning of V'hrak prowess. Show them the beauty of a true warrior. Perhaps then, they will understand the honor they are refusing. V'hrak slammed, his fist to his chestplate. It will be a poem of fire, my lord. Go, V'hrak commanded. Awaken them. In the heap, the proximity alarms shrieked. One ship, boss, Jeb reported, his voice tight. Detaching from the mothership. It's small, fast. Glaive class, according to the database. One pilot. He's burning straight for us. Low altitude, high speed. Kai stared at the tactical display. The small, honorable icon was screaming towards their habitat. Weapons? Kai asked. Negative, Jeb said, his voice full of suspicion. His weapon ports are cold. Hang on. He's broadcasting. On all channels. Is that music? A high, keening operatic wail filled the ops pit. A V'hrak epic poem about blood, fire, and honor. He's challenging us with a song, Kai said, rubbing her temples. He's unarmed, and he's singing at us. Yeah, Jeb said, his voice turning cold. And he's flying right over the primary mag hauler track. V'hrak, herald of the High Lord, was ecstatic. His glaive handled like a living thing, a perfect extension of his will. He skimmed the ugly, red dust of the moon, the song of challenge blaring from his speakers. He saw the primitive, box-like habitat of the humans looming ahead. The heap. He admired his own courage. To fly unarmed into the den of primitives was an act of supreme honor. He banked his ship, showing off the High Lord's crimson standard painted on his wings. He was a comet of pure warrior grace. He was V'hrak. Boss, Jeb said, his hand hovering over a large industrial control panel. He's right in the danger zone for track 7. That track is scheduled for a haul in 40 seconds. Jeb, Kai said, her voice a low warning. Look, boss, Jeb argued, his voice offended. This is an automated system. It is a safety protocol. Automated systems run on a schedule. We are a mine. That mag hauler is set to move 4,000 tons of raw, unprocessed ore from the pit to the refinery. If this honorable idiot is dumb enough to fly his million-credit hot rod in the path of a high-speed, high-mass automated industrial train, well, that's not a guild problem. That's a him problem. It's an industrial accident. He's broadcasting. A warning, Jeb, Kai said, though her voice lacked conviction. We're broadcasting automated safety warnings on that track 24/7, Jeb shot back. He's ignoring them to play his opera, so I am not touching a thing. I am just letting the automated schedule run its course, as per guild safety regs. Kai looked at the screen. She looked at Jeb. She turned her back to the console and took a slow sip of her coffee. I'm going to be inspecting the air recycler logs. Let me know if anything interesting happens. Will do, boss. V'hrak banked for his second pass, bringing his glaive even lower. He was so close he could see the crude pitting on the habitats. windows. He smiled. Perhaps a child was watching, a primitive human infant, who would be inspired by this moment of pure V'hrak honor. He never saw it coming. The Mag Holler Track 7 was not a traditional train. It was a series of massive, superconducting electromagnets that launched a kilometer-long train of ore-filled hoppers at 300 kilometers per hour. Just as V'hrak's glaive passed over the track, the system activated. 4,000 tons of raw, highly ferrous ore were accelerated to launch speed. The magnetic field that was generated was not a subtle thing. It was a violent industrial force. V'hrak's glaive, a ship made of elegant conductive alloys, was instantly, violently grabbed by the field. From V'hrak's perspective, the moon itself had reached up and seized his ship. His controls were dead. Alarms shrieked, drowning out his glorious opera. He was dragged downward, sideways, and slammed with impossible force into the side of the lead ore hopper. The glaive, a masterpiece of V'hrak engineering, did not explode. It was shredded, it was crushed, mangled, and added with industrial indifference to the 4,000-ton slug of flying garbage. On the will of fire, High Lord V'hrak watched his Herald signal vanish. He watched the telemetry as his finest pilot was abruptly magnetized and eaten by a rock-hauling machine. He was in a state of profound, dishonorable shock. He whispered. Did they just ambush my Herald with a train? The outrage on the V'hrak bridge was a palpable, hissing thing. This was not war. This was not honor. This was extermination. This was pest control. To use an automated industrial machine to slay an honorable, unarmed Herald. It was an act of such profound, primitive cowardice that V'hrak could not process. They are vermin, his new adjutant hissed, his own fur bristling. They have no souls, High Lord. They do not deserve the honor of our challenge. They deserve only the cleansing. The cleansing is not our way, V'hrak growled, though his conviction was shaken. He was a warrior, not a butcher. He would not scour the planet of life. He would escalate. He would show them a true act of V'hrak power. He would issue a warning of intent. Bring the primary plasma lance online, V'hrak ordered, his voice cold. Target their largest industrial structure, the one that smokes, the refinery. We will fire a single calibrated warning shot at its base. We will show them that our power is real, that our intent is serious. This is not a game of trains. In the heap, the mood was not celebratory. It was tense. Boss, we got a problem. Jeb's voice was low. They're powering up. A lot. They've got a big spinal mount weapon, and it's glowing, and it's pointed right at the refinery. Kai's blood ran cold. The mag hauler was one thing. This was another. The refinery? Jeb, that's where we store the entire moon's stock of unprocessed thiol nitrate. The venting system is already over pressure. Corporate wouldn't pay for the fix if that place gets hit. I know what it is, boss, Jeb said, his voice grim. It's not a refinery. It's a bomb. A really, really big, dirty chemical bomb. And they're about to light the fuse. Hail them, Kai yelled. Tell them to stop. Tell them what's in there. I'm trying. They're not listening. They're blocking our comms. Aboard the Will of Fire, V'hrak watched his target. He would show these vermin the consequence of their dishonor. Fire, he commanded. A single glorious lance of blue-white plasma crossed the void. It struck the base of the refinery with perfect, honorable precision. From V'hrak's perspective, the result was immediate and disproportionate. The refinery did not just explode. It detonated. It was not a conventional explosion. It was a massive, flashing chemical chain reaction. A plume of thick, sickly yellow-green vapor, superheated and expanding at supersonic speed, erupted from the ground. The blast was so large it sent seismic shockwaves through the moon's crust, triggering every sensor on the V'hrak fleet. But the vapor was worse. The cloud of thiol nitrate gas, a highly corrosive byproduct of the ore processing, was blasted by its own detonation straight up, out of the moon's thin atmosphere, and directly into the path of the low-orbiting V'hrak fleet. Alarms blared on. V'hrak's bridge, High Lord! His adjutant shrieked, all honor forgotten. Hull breach warnings, all ships, the cloud it's corrosive, it's eating the armor. The elegant, honor-marked hull of the Will of Fire was sizzling. Paint bubbled, sensors dissolved. Microfractures appeared all over his viewport. V'hrak stared in abject horror. He had fired a single honorable warning shot. The humans, in an act of unthinkable suicidal barbarism, had retaliated by detonating their own moon and assaulting his fleet with a continent-sized cloud of acid. They are monsters, he breathed, ordering his fleet to pull back to a safer orbit. In the heap, which had been rocked by the detonation, Kai pulled herself up. The air was thick with dust. Well, Jeb coughed over the comm. That worked better than expected. They're pulling back, they look scared. Kai looked at the V'hrak fleet, now limping to a higher, safer orbit. Their beautiful, pristine hulls now pitted and scarred with chemical burns. They had come for a glorious war. They had run into an industrial disaster zone. Jeb, she said, a cold, hard scrapper's idea forming in her mind. They're afraid of our garbage. They don't know what's a weapon and what's an accident. I think it's time we took them on a tour of the scrapyard. High Lord V'hrak was in a state of profound spiritual dishonor. His flagship, the Will of Fire, was a vessel of artistic and martial perfection. Now, its silver-white hull was a mess of bubbling, corrosive scars. His fleet, which had arrived as a vision of glorious divine intent, now looked like it had been savaged by some giant acid-spitting beast. His adjutant was correct. The cloud of thiol nitrate had been an effective, if horrifyingly barbaric, weapon. He had withdrawn his fleet to the very edge of Tartarus's gravity well, a safe, high orbit where his technicians were frantically trying to neutralize the acid that was still eating at their hulls. The damage was more than cosmetic. The corrosive gas had damaged delicate external sensor arrays and weakened the micro-thrusters used for honorable, close-quarters maneuvering. His perfect fleet was now clumsy. They are not warriors, V'hrak growled, pacing the bridge, his claws clicking a sharp, angry rhythm on the obsidian floor. They are biochemists. They use poison. They use industrial traps. They have no champion. They have only accidents. High Lord, his new adjutant Varen offered, his voice low and careful. The primitives are hailing us. It is the same one. The foreman. Put her on the main screen, V'hrak commanded. I will face this creature who dares to wage war with fines and acid. Kai Reed's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired. Her face was smudged with dust, and she was standing in what appeared to be a chaotic, low-ceilinged room full of exposed pipes. She did not look like a victorious general. She looked like a plumber. High Lord V'hrak, Kai said, her voice flat and devoid of fear or triumph. This is Foreman Reed. I am broadcasting on behalf of the Tartarus Ore Guild. We have assessed the damage to our refinery, designated Warning Shot 1. We have also assessed the damages to your fleet from the resulting uncontrolled chemical detonation, designated Workplace Accident Alpha. We are prepared to offer you a truce to discuss reparations. V'hrak stared. The audacity of this primitive was boundless. She was offering him a truce? Foreman Reed, V'hrak said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. You have slain my herald with an industrial machine. You have assaulted my fleet with a chemical bomb. These are not accidents. These are acts of the most profound dishonor. You have forfeited your right to a noble war. You will present your warrior-caste for final combat, or we will cleanse this moon of your filth. Kai actually sighed. She looked away from the camera for a moment, as if speaking to someone else in the room. Jeb, he still thinks we're a warrior-caste. He still thinks this is honorable. She looked back at V'hrak, her eyes cold. High Lord, we are miners. We are not warriors. We do not have a warrior caste. We do not do honorable duels. What we do have is a lot of heavy machinery, a lot of dangerous garbage, and a zero-tolerance policy for trespassers who blow up our equipment. This is your final warning. Leave. Or we will classify your fleet as a worksite hazard and we will clear it, the same way we clear a stuck ore hauler or a dangerous asteroid. Read out. The screen went blank. V'hrak was silent. He looked at his adjutant. Clear it? I believe it is another primitive threat, High Lord, V'hrak stammered. A crude boast. No, V'hrak said, a new cold realization dawning. This foreman does not boast. She does not understand honor at all. She is not a warrior. She is an exterminator. She thinks of us as vermin in her own home. He pointed to the tactical display. They are launching ships. Kai stood in the heap's primary launch bay. It was not a hangar. It was a garage. The air stank of ozone, plasma torch exhaust, and cheap synthetic lubricant. Around her, the scrapper crews were gathered, a motley collection of men and women in bulky, padded, and stained pressure suits. They were the guild's daredevils, the pilots who flew the tugs and cutters into the high-orbit scrapyard to retrieve valuable debris. They were by nature half-mad, completely fearless, and the best low-G pilots in the system. All right, you rock-hoppers, Kai yelled over the bay's PA system. Change of plans. Corporate just declared a hazardous materials clearance bonus. Target-rich environment, high orbit. A cheer went up. Hazard pay was the scrapper's favorite word. You see the pretty ships up there? Kai continued, pointing at the ceiling. The ones who blew up the refinery? They're illegally parked, and they are now officially designated as high-risk salvage. Your job is not to fight them. Your job is to do what you do every day. You are going to go up to the scrapyard. You are going to do it loud, and you are going to treat anyone who gets in your way like a piece of unclaimed debris. Jeb, standing beside her, tapped his console. The tugs are prepped, boss. We fitted them with the old mass driver magnets, the ones we banned for being too dangerous and unshielded. Good, Kai grinned. They're not weapons. They're industrial tools. And our new friends are made of very pretty, very conductive metal. Launch the fleet. The fleet was 30 ships. They were not glaives. They were tugs. They were ugly, asymmetrical, blocky machines, overpowered and over-armored. They were flying, cinder blocks, equipped with plasma cutters, magnetic grapplers, and kinetic harpoons, all designed for industrial salvage. They were the scrappers of Tartarus, and they rose from the dust like an angry swarm of bricks. They're not even trying to hide, boss, Jeb reported, his voice full of awe. They're burning straight for the V'hrak fleet, squawking guild salvage codes on all channels. High Lord V'hrak watched the human ships ascend. They were hideous. They were an aesthetic offense. They were lumpy, unbalanced, and leaking radiation and engine plasma from unshielded, crude chemical thrusters. This, he realized, must be the warrior-caste. It was as dishonorable and ugly as their tactics. They're launching their fleet at us, V'hrak said, stating the obvious. A pathetic display. 30 ships against 1,000? They are not foolish, V'hrak said, his tactical mind assessing the threat. They are primitive but not stupid. They know they cannot win a set-piece battle. This is a feint, or it is a distraction, for another acid bomb perhaps. He watched the scrapper fleet climb. They were not angling for his fleet. They were flying straight towards the ring of debris, the scrapyard. High Lord, V'hrak said, confused. The vermin fleet is fleeing. They are hiding in their own garbage. A coward's tactic, V'hrak sneered. But he felt a twinge of unease. This was what these creatures did. They used their environment. They used their garbage. He would not be fooled again. They think they can hide from us, V'hrak declared. They are wrong. Send in the first wing, 100 glaives. Their orders are to pursue and destroy. Honorably. No mercy. Show them the futility of hiding from the Ascendancy. 100 beautiful silver-white glaives detached from the V'hrak fleet. They were the finest interceptors in the galaxy, piloted by warrior aristocrats who trained in the art of the honorable dogfight from birth. They formed a perfect, shimmering lance and dove straight towards the scrapyard. Jeb laughed. It was not a nice sound. Boss, he said, his voice gleeful. They're taking the bait. They're following our boys into the yard. Oh, they are so stupid. They're not stupid, Jeb, Kai said, her eyes locked on the display. They're just ignorant. To them, that's a cloud of debris. To our scrappers, that's home. Tell the boys to go dark, and wake up the grappler. The scrapyard was not a cloud. It was a blender. 3 centuries of high-velocity, micrometeorite-pitted razor-sharp garbage all orbiting at different speeds and inclinations. There were dead reactor cores, 10-ton slabs of pitted steel hull, twisted girders, and clouds of frozen, discarded coolant. The scrapper tugs, with their heavy armor, their advanced proximity radars, and their pilots' intimate, insane knowledge of the terrain, navigated it with ease. They killed their engines, went dark, and used their magnetic grapplers to anchor themselves to massive, spinning asteroids of frozen slag. They waited. The V'hrak First Wing entered the scrapyard with arrogant, honorable speed. Their glaives were fast, elegant, and had all the impact resistance of wet paper. The lead glaive pilot, a V'hrak aristocrat named Herald, was the first to die. He was flying in a perfect, honorable formation when his ship was impaled by a 3-meter length of rebar that had been discarded from a refinery construction project 50 years prior. It was traveling at 10,000 kilometers per hour. It did not explode his ship. It just penciled through it from nose to engine, killing him instantly and leaving his ship to tumble end over end. Target 1, down. A scrapper pilot named Mina muttered over a private comm. That's my rebar. I was gonna salvage that last week. Gonna bill the V'hrak for it. The V'hrak formation broke in panic. This was not a dogfight. This was a minefield. They were in a 3-dimensional hell of shrapnel. Now, Kai's voice said, over the scrapper channel. Go to work. It was not a battle. It was an industrial operation. From behind a dead satellite, a scrapper tug ignited its engines. It did not fire a missile. It fired its primary magnetic grappler. The massive 4-pronged claw, attached to a supertensile cable, slammed into a passing glaive. The V'hrak pilot, V'hrak's own nephew, felt a massive, bone-jarring thud. He did not explode. He was captured. Got one, the tug pilot yelled. He's a live one. He's wiggling. The tug engaged its winch, reeling the terrified. Flailing V'hrak pilot in. The pilot fired his weapons, but the energy blasts did nothing against the tug's thick industrial armor, which was designed to withstand micrometeorite showers. A second tug, the grappler, moved in. It was a massive ship, little more than a reactor, and 2 giant industrial plasma cutters. Its pilot, a man named Scraps, brought his torch up to the glaive's canopy. This is Scrapper 1 to V'hrak, pretty boy. Scraps broadcast on the V'hrak's captured frequency. You are now salvage. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded for processing, or I'm gonna cut you out of that cockpit the hard way. Your choice, buddy. On the Will of Fire, High Lord V'hrak watched in silent, paralyzed horror as his finest warriors were not honorably defeated. They were being hunted, impaled by garbage, captured with winches and threatened with plasma cutters. This was not war, this was scrapping. High Lord V'hrak had tasted the bitterness of defeat before, but that had been in honorable combat, a sensation akin to a sharp, clean pain. This was not pain. This was a septic, spreading infection of pure, unadulterated humiliation. His first wing, 100 of the Ascendancy's finest pilots, had not been defeated. They had been processed. His bridge was a chaotic litany of damage reports, missing pilot logs, and, most offensively, incoming transmissions from the human habitat. They were not cries for mercy or declarations of victory. They were invoices. High Lord Farin, his adjutant, reported, his voice trembling with a fury that mirrored V'hrak's own. The primitives are sending us salvage liens. They are claiming the wreckage of our own glaives under their guild law. They are charging us, High Lord. They are charging us storage fees for the pilots they have captured. V'hrak stared at the main screen, which now showed a grainy, static-filled image from a human external camera. It showed his nephew, Cavell, alive but being prodded by a human in a bulky, stained yellow pressure suit. They were cutting the honor crests off his glaive's wreckage with an industrial plasma torch. They were treating his family's standard like scrap. This was the core of the problem. V'hrak had no honorable way to fight them. In space, they hid in their field of garbage, a place his elegant ships could not navigate. On the ground, they hid behind their industrial accidents, turning their own infrastructure into chemical weapons. He could cleanse the moon from high orbit, but that was a butcher's tactic, an admission of his own failure to impose his will honorably. It would be a stain on his bloodline for 10,000 years. They are not warriors, V'hrak said, his voice a low, dangerous calm. They are scrappers. They think only of profit and loss, salvage and waste. They do not understand honor, so I will force them to. A new tactic, High Lord? Varian asked. An ancient one, V'hrak said. He walked to his command chair. They will not face my fleet. They will not face my warriors, so they will face me. I will challenge their leader, the foreman, to a Kvashtor, a final duel. Her life for the claim to this system. She cannot hide from that. Even a primitive understands a one-on-one challenge. But High Lord, she is a coward. She will refuse or send a machine in her place. She will not, V'hrak said, a cold certainty in his voice. This foreman has pride, Varian, a crude managerial pride, but it is there. She will not be seen hiding from a personal challenge in front of her workers. She will come. He keyed the transmitter. Broadcast the challenge. High Lord V'hrak versus Foreman Reed. 1 combatant each. All other forces will stand down. The winner claims Tartarus. Let even their primitive souls recognize the honor of this final offer. In the heap, the atmosphere was thick with the smell of welding ozone and victory beer. The scrappers had returned, not with the spoils of war, but with the bonus of salvage. They had towed 36 dead or disabled glaives into the primary processing bay, and their pilots were being held in a converted ore hopper under guard. The little wolfmen are real prickly, Jeb reported to Kai, a grin on his greasy face. Young Cavell, the Lord's nephew, is refusing our protein paste. Says it's dishonorable food, more for us, I guess. Kai smiled, but her eyes were on the new message that had just arrived. It was V'hrak's challenge. A duel. He's serious, boss, Jeb said, his smile fading. He's done messing around. This is a trap. You go out there, and his whole fleet will glass you the second you step out of the heap. It's not a trap, Jeb, Kai said, reading the V'hrak message again. It was full of language about blood oaths, divine witnesses, and the unbreakable word of an ascendant lord. It was insane, but it was sincere. He's not a liar, he's just stuck. He can't fight our garbage, so he's trying to fight me. This isn't a trap. It's a negotiation. He just doesn't know it yet. So what do? You can't fight that thing. He's a 7-foot predator in power armor. No, Kai agreed, a slow, pragmatic smile spreading across her face. I can't fight him, but I don't have to. He wants a duel. We'll give him a duel, just not an honorable one. It'll be a worksite duel. She keyed her transmitter. High Lord V'hrak, this is Foreman Reed. I accept your challenge on behalf of the guild. The venue will be processing Bay 4 on the surface. 1 combatant each. 1 hour. Be there. And High Lord, I'd recommend you wear your steel-toed boots. It's a hazardous environment. Processing Bay 4 was not a chamber of honor. It was an open-air industrial shredder. It was a vast, 3-square-kilometer concrete slab, dominated by a series of automated conveyor belts, towering electromagnetic cranes, and, at its center, the crusher, a 50-meter-wide hydraulic press used for compacting metal hulls into salvage cubes. The air was thick with metal dust and the smell of ionized metal. High Lord V'hrak landed his personal glaive at the bay's perimeter. He had come alone, as honor demanded. He was clad in his ancestral battle armor, a masterpiece of silver-white alloy, and in his hand he held the Kvashnar, an energy glaive whose blade burned with a blue-white fire. He was ready for a divine duel. He looked around. The place was a filthy, noisy pit. And his opponent? Where was she? Over here, your lordship. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. V'hrak turned. Standing in the shadow of the crusher was not the small, soft human woman from the screen. It was a monster. A 5-meter-tall yellow asymmetrical beast of metal and hydraulics. It was an industrial loader rig, a human exosuit designed for lifting multi-ton ore containers. Its left arm was a massive pincer claw, its right a plasma cutter, and Kai's small face was visible behind a thick safety glass canopy. "This is your armor?" V'hrak demanded, his honor recoiling from the sheer ugly pragmatism of the machine. "This is not a warrior's garb. It is a tool. It's personal protective equipment, High Lord," Kai's voice boomed back. "This is an active worksite, guild regs. Now are we going to do this or what? My boys are billing me for the downtime." V'hrak roared in fury. This was the final insult. He would end this farce. He ignited his glaive and charged. He was a blur of honorable speed. His ancestral blade was designed to cut through the armor of rival warlords. He leapt, aiming a disabling blow at the exosuit's leg joint. Kai did not dodge. She was too slow, her machine too clumsy. She just planted her foot. V'hrak's energy glaive struck the loader rig's 3-ton foot. The blade, a priceless relic, did not cut. It met a meter of solid, impact-absorbing, industrial-grade steel. There was a flash, a deafening scream of energy, and the ancestral blade shattered. The rebound threw V'hrak backward. He landed on the concrete, staring at the smoking, useless hilt in his hand. His weapon was broken. Kai did not charge. She did not attack. She just stood there, the exosuit's headlights pinning him. You broke it," V'hrak whispered, his voice full of a sacrilegious horror. "It's cheap metal, High Lord," Kai's voice replied. "Wasn't safety rated. Now this is your last chance. Yield. This duel is over. This is now a hazardous material clearance." "Yield?" V'hrak roared, leaping to his feet. His blade was gone, but his honor remained. His armor's gauntlets still crackled with energy. "I am High Lord of the V'hrak. I do not yield to unarmed primitive vermin." He charged again, aiming to tear the canopy open with his own hands. Kai sighed. Her voice, broadcast over the exosuit's speaker, was full of a manager's disappointment. "I tried, buddy." She did not attack him. She reached up with the loader rig's massive pincer claw and slammed her fist onto a large, red industrial control panel on the side of the crusher. The panel was labeled Emergency Cycle Start. A klaxon blared across the bay. It was not a war horn. It was an industrial safety alarm. V'hrak skidded to a halt. What new dishonor was this? The ground beneath him began to move. The conveyor belt he was standing on, a belt designed to move multi-ton wrecks, roared to life. He was being pulled slowly but unstoppably towards the gaping 10-story maw of the crusher. He tried to run backward, but the belt was too fast. He was scrambling, his honor forgotten, his claws scraping on the metal. Above him, the giant electromagnetic crane also roared to life, swinging a 10-ton slab of metal debris directly over his head, its warning beeper adding to the din. He was not in a duel. He was in a death machine. He was trapped. If he leapt to the left, the crane would get him. If he stayed put, the conveyor belt would feed him into the hydraulic press. And in front of him, the yellow human exosuit just stood, watching, its plasma cutter arm humming to life. "Stop!" V'hrak screamed, his voice cracking with a new terrifying emotion. Fear. "I yield. The duel is over. I yield." Kai reached up and slammed the emergency stop. The conveyor belt groaned to a halt. The crane stopped. The klaxon died. Silence, heavy and thick with metal dust, fell over the bay. V'hrak was on his hands and knees on the belt, panting. He was just 5 meters from the crusher's oily jaws. The loader rig's canopy hissed open. Kai Reed hopped down, holding a datapad. She walked over to the defeated, trembling High Lord. "Good," she said, her voice normal again. "Now that we've settled that, let's talk reparations. This is the itemized bill. It includes 1 refinery, 1 Herald's glaive salvage and disposal fee, 37 captured glaives, environmental scrubbing fees for the acid cloud, and hazard pay bonuses for my entire crew. You can pay us in refined heavy metals, or you can turn over the salvage rights to your damaged fleet. I'll take either." V'hrak looked at the datapad. He looked at the crusher. He looked at the woman. He had come to win a glorious war. He had lost a financial negotiation. "We will pay," he whispered, defeated not by a warrior, but by a barbaric, dishonorable, and terrifyingly pragmatic accountant. The scrappers of Tartarus had won.